Well, Whittier today is a town that's trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. Back in the 1950s, it was a Cold War era garrison, military garrison. All the wood buildings were abandoned and demolished in 1960, and all we have remaining are the concrete buildings that most of us live in here. And we are still just trying to figure out if we want to be a quiet little town or if we want to be a vacation, recreation, tourist destination. You're not going to see very many places that have only 270 residents, that have a cruise ship dock, that have a small boat harbor, and it has a fish processing plant. It's a railhead for the Alaska Railroad, so that we have 30% of the barge freight that comes into Alaska comes through this port here. And yet all we have is 270 people to kind of hold down the fort and run things. It puts a lot of pressure on those people that contribute to the progress of this town. The people of Whittier are happy where things are right now. Yeah, I don't think that they want to see too much growth. You know, there's people here that are still upset about the tunnel opening up to vehicle traffic 22 years ago. And you know, it's the end of the road. The people that want to live in a quiet, secluded space, you know, behind a one-way tunnel. Across the bay, we've got mountain goats that are grazing. We've got Billings Glacier. We've got black bears that run around, and we have shrimp right out our front door here where we can go shrimping. We've got halibut and salmon, and it's also a rainforest, so we get lots and lots of rain and lots of snow during the wintertime that comes along with that. But to me it's paradise, right? It's where you can see the northern lights during the wintertime right out the front window. And man, when the full moon is out and the mountains are lit up and it's, you know, perfectly calm and still, it's magical. It is just magical. The Buckner Building was, I think, one of the first buildings that was built during the Cold War era. And it was the biggest building in Alaska, you know, when it was first built. It had all kinds of things, you know, commissary and all the things that you might imagine in a big town, all under one roof. But when the military moved out, it was just abandoned, and the only thing that kept this place alive really was the first 5 floors, I think, of the Begich Towers building, and everything else was just given up to the elements. Now all you've got is kind of a toxic soup in the basement of that thing.
That was built in 1953 and 1954, and when it was built, it was the biggest building in the state of Alaska. It's got 270,000 square feet. It had a movie theater, a swimming pool, post office, morgue, a full hospital, jail. It was called a city under one roof. But that only lasted until '58, and then it was evacuated out. In 1958, there were 1,000 military stationed here, and with Eisenhower cutbacks, they extracted all of those. That left 35 civilians, and what they had is what the 7 concrete buildings, 96 acres of land. There was only 35 people. I mean, they had to kind of, pick where they were going to live. Anyway, and they lived on the first 2 floors of that building. And the Buckner Building has been vacant since then, since '58. They surplused out the 7 concrete buildings and 96 acres of land and put it up for sale for $200,000. By 1972, nobody had stepped up to buy it. So the 35 people that lived here got together and made a deal with the military to purchase the 96 acres and 7 buildings for the $200,000. So what they did is they held an auction, and they auctioned off the apartment in the 14-story building for about $18,000 a piece. They auctioned off the half-acre lots, $8,000 for the lots. They did it with 10% down, and they'd carry the note for 20 years. Off of the original sale, they raised the $200,000 and set up an income for Whittier for the next 30 years, and they carried the note at 10%. Well, it was military that left, and they were civilians. They'd already made it, made it their home. 40 years ago, there were more young people here. They worked for the railroad. Crowley Maritime was in here. They worked there. And we also had fishing families that lived here. But with the new laws they put in effect, that pretty much crushed the fishing families. And then when they opened up the tunnel for people to come in, a lot of people thought that then Whittier was really gonna pop, you know, but instead people moved out. No, they liked it the way it was. So anyway, and you know, we fought the road opening up, and then when it opened up, we used it more than anyone else did. So, and it's worked out fine. I think the community would have more stability if people could buy property and maybe have a place to go barbecue, that sort of thing, other than staying in the apartment. When you have a minuscule amount of real estate, and I mean minuscule, there is not, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, you cannot buy a piece of property here. There are 4 people that own property, me, my son, Joe Shen, and the mayor. From the ground up is Chugach National Forest. That takes in most of your mountains. The flatland is owned by the railroad. Okay. So there you are. My biggest goal in the whole thing was to be able to make enough money to support myself and my kids, and I did it. In Anchorage, there was a guy, and his name was Pete Zamarello. He could go 10 miles out from where anything was built, put up a strip mall, and almost like magic, that area exploded. He did it everywhere. Well, he bought the Buckner Building. And when he did, people knew, because he had that Midas touch, that place was gonna just boom. And needless to say, the apartment sold. They wanted to get in on this because they knew he had the gift. But then the price of oil fell to $8 a barrel. And he was extended, and he got caught up in a bankruptcy. And before he could get out of that, the IRS threw him in jail for 5 years for tax evasion. So that brought the Buckner Building back to the city. Then we had 2 different outfits that came in, and they were going to rehab it and turn it into something else. And they got to put a lock on it for just paying the taxes on it. But eventually that faded out, and the city got it back. Then we had Marriott that was swarming around, and they were going to turn it into something, and blah, 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 and there were all kinds of studies. That went to hell in a handbasket. That building's had no maintenance, nothing. And 25 years ago, it would have cost $4 million to tear it down. Now, what, 50, 80? No, it's going to be there forever.
There's been engineering studies, and it's been determined that it would cost more to try and repair it than it would to tear it down and build something new. It happens to be sitting on land that the city of Whittier owns, which is rare, right? But that is some flat land that could be developed that the city actually owns. The only problem is there's this big building sitting on it and we can't do anything with it. So I agree. I mean, I think that, you know, I know about the Save the Buckner contingent that's here, and I think it is cool, and I think it is a really neat monument to the military era that was here. But that land is something that we really need.
Messing with it.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Buckner Building. That one was very high on the priorities list here for the Alaska series, and there's a lot of build-up for it after the previous episode, so it was great to get the opportunity to go in there and do some filming and share with all of you guys here on the channel. So I hope you enjoyed that. Most of all, thanks for watching, everyone. As always, take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, I know I need a whole lot of help. Tell me now, am I delivered? Or do I need forgiveness from my doubts? Yeah, I'm a sinner. At least I got my bones intact. Yeah, I'm a sinner. At least I got my bones intact.